the town was much busier. You got to see a lot of big American cars coming down Argyle Street in those days. And, always an interesting topic of conversation. And I think that it was nice at that time that a lot of the locals got introduced to some of the American products like Cheerios and marshmallows and what else are we talking about? Hershey bars and
soda
a lot of the sodas and these sort of things, and popcorn and cold beer instead of warm beer and these sort of things. That's for the adults now. That's not for the children, of course. Okay, but I think the two communities work very well together, and
I think especially when they first came, because there was no military housing. They had to find houses locally. So in most cases, their neighbours were Scottish people. And they got to know their neighbours. And their children grew up together. And the American children rapidly developed Scottish accents. And they were in and out of each other's houses all the time. They became very, very close. And a lot of these families are still close to this day, And I think that was great. But it kind of stopped a bit to a certain extent, because when they built the housing, which they desperately needed housing, then they tended to stay within their own housing areas and their own groups, and there wasn't quite so much, interaction between the families, and that in a way was a bit of a shame. But I'll tell you something, the American parents loved school uniforms, absolutely loved them, because in America it's, I want this because so-and-so's got this, and I don't want to wear that today. I want to wear something different and all this. And she said when they came here, and it was, that's what you wear. That's what everybody wears. You get up in the morning, you put it on, no problems. They were in heaven. And the American children were very proud of their school uniforms here. Wore them with pride. If you see the photographs, there's one up there on the wall, I think. And you'll see that the kids were very proud of their uniforms. And did very well in school. I thought they were gorgeous. One in particular. And my father put his foot down and said I wasn't allowed to date any Americans, because he says, I've been in the services myself, and I know what young men get up to when they're away from home. So I was banned. However, that didn't particularly stop me, and I did have one American boyfriend before I met Gerry, but he went back to America, which was good, because then I met the right one. And my father, of course, had died by then, and my mother welcomed Gerry with open arms. She liked him the minute she saw him. And I said, well, why? How do you know? She said, he looks me in the eye when he talks to me. He's not hiding anything. So I thought that was probably pretty good summing up. And so have you got anything you want to say on that?
Nothing that I'm holding back, anyway.
They were the young men. It was hard for them. They were away from home. Some of them were quite lonely. Especially, Gerry came from a small town.
I came from a small town. It's much easier for me to probably adjust than it would be maybe another guy maybe came from the city of New York or Chicago or Cincinnati or some of these other cities. But I think you did find that. You found that a lot of the young Navy sailors did come from the South or smaller communities. But, we're from everywhere, and we come, of course, and we land in Dunoon, which hadn't changed for generations. And it's a big chance to adjust and get to where we can kind of live alongside, But Dunoon, I remember Dunoon quite well in the 60s. Dunoon was a bustling, small town. The shops on Argyle Street used to have all their produce out on the pavements. And Saturday, you couldn't even walk down the pavements because of the amount of people out there, and everybody stopping and talking and everything. It was such a welcoming community. How could you not feel good? I could hardly walk down the street when I used to meet Linda at the pier. I would be surrounded. In those days, we had to wear our uniforms ashore. And when I was standing down there waiting, I was kind of like the local Dunoon attraction. I used to have maybe 10, 20 people surround me down there asking me questions and just want to hear me talk and listen to my accent and everything, and which I thought was quite quaint, and it was very welcoming.
I worked in Glasgow, you see, so I would come home off the boat every night about 6:45, and I'd be saying, "Oh, I wonder what," because he would meet me if he could, and I would always wonder. I always knew where he was, because all I could see was a whole crowd of people and a little white pork pie hat in the middle. I said, "Oh, there he is," and he was always surrounded by people who say, "Oh, say something. Oh, where'd you come from? Oh, Kentucky. Oh, yeah, the Derby and all this stuff," and he just, I had to sort of say hello, remember me, and tear him away, and we'd walk along the prom down to my mother's house, and she would give us our tea, wouldn't she? But I think the young sailors especially, they missed their families. They missed their mothers. I mean, let's be honest, some of them were only in their teens. And there were a lot of people in Dunoon who opened their homes to them. They would give them a room where they could just go in and change their clothes, so they didn't have to wear their uniforms all the time. And my first American boyfriend had a lady like that on Mary Street, and she would just take him in and give him his tea. And if he was out and the weather was bad, he'd somewhere he could go. And it was like being home with his mom again, And a lot of Dunoon people did that. And there were very strong friendships formed through that kind of thing. And I thought it was great. It was nice, because they were lonely and they missed their families. So